My name is Paula Morris, and I am pleased to be with you today to talk about coping with normal changes of the aging eye. So, the first thing you should know is that I am not a doctor, but I am an ophthalmic imager. I've been doing images of eyes, pictures of eyes, angiograms of eyes for 47 years. So, I feel like, and I'm also visually impaired, so I'm blind in one eye. So I feel like I'm in good stead to talk to you about this topic today, and I hope that you feel like you are getting, number one, basic information about eyes and vision, and also common sense approaches to coping with vision loss, whether you are the one with vision loss or someone in your family or someone close to you. And I'm also going to show you quickly some instructions on how to be a sighted guide. So first of all, let's talk about ophthalmology. How do you spell it? Well, it's OPHTHALOMOLGY. And this is, how do you pronounce it? Ophthalmology. It's not ophthalmology, it's ophthalmology. So what is an ophthalmologist? Okay, well, it's a medical doctor who specializes in caring for eyes. They need 4 years of college, 4 years of medical school, 1 year of internship, 3 to 5 years of residency. Look at this, and a fellowship. These folks spend a lot of time training to give you good care. What is an optometrist? Because I'm certain that many of you see an optometrist for your eye care, and they are non-surgical eye care specialists who can identify problems, and they specialize in prescribing eyeglasses and non-surgical treatment of some eye disorders. And of course, optometrists. I just want to point out what an optician is, and those are the folks that work in optical shops that are trained to help with your eyeglass fitting or with contact lenses and other vision correction. But these folks do not diagnose or treat eye conditions. So if you've got something in your eye, or if you've got something going on with your eye, don't drive to where you get your glasses. You need to go to an Instacare, or you need to call your doctor's office, something like that. So I just want to point out, when you need surgery on your eyes, in the state of Utah, only ophthalmologists can perform surgeries like cataracts, or if you have a retinal detachment, optometrists can't. So Medicare can be applied to surgeries that are not cosmetic. So if you have cataracts and you have Medicare, you're worried about paying for your surgery and stuff, Medicare pays for it. It's just part of the natural process. And the other point is, you need to check your health insurance to see which doctors are in your network. So if your optometrist says, you know, Mrs. Jones, it's about time you had your cataracts out, you need to, I mean, we naturally ask our friends, who do you go to and are they good? But before you fall in love with who you think you want to do your surgery, you need to make sure that your insurance will pay for it. So parts is parts, but not in ophthalmology. There's nothing interchangeable. Many people say, I just wish I could go to the same old eye doctor and he could cover everything, whether it's a corneal problem or my retina or my muscles. And that just doesn't work that way, because no one person can be well-versed in every part of the eye because it's so complicated. So most subspecialties are associated with the location, with structure, location, and function. Okay, this is a cross-section of the eye. There's the cornea in the front, the iris is the color part, the pupil is just a hole, the lens is what refracts things, trabecular meshwork. That has to do with making fluid in the eye. The vitreous chamber is just a space, and your retina, back here, the retina is critical for seeing well. And then, of course, the optic nerve, because that's how messages get to the brain. So this is a photograph of a normal eye. This is the optic nerve, and that is a natural blind spot. There are no receptor cells there. And this is the fovea. This is the macula. You may have heard the word macular when they're talking about macular degeneration. So how does the eye work? Well, let's look at this real quickly. If you think of a camera, light goes through the front, through lenses, and gets focused back on film. That's pretty pretty simply put, and there's a battery in the camera that helps everything work. Now let's look down here. If you think about up here, this is how the eye works. Light goes through a hole, which is the pupil. The cornea helps to refract the light, helps to focus the light. The lens does that as well. And the whole point is to have light come straight back and hit boom right there on the fovea, right at the picture that we saw before. And then, of course, here's your optic nerve. And then these receptor cells are wired and they go back to the optic nerve that goes to the brain. Uh-oh. Here we go. Okay, so let's look at it this way. Here's a camera. You see something, an apple or a car. The light goes in, it gets juxtaposed, turned, reversed on the image on film, okay? Now, in your eye, same thing. Here's the apple, here's the car. It goes through your cornea, it goes through this space, this hole to your lens, and then it's focused on your retina, and then the image goes to your brain, and your brain straightens it out to what it's supposed to look like. Now, there are different types of vision. Central vision is what comes from your fovea. It has cone receptors. There are two types of retinal receptor cells, and the cones are the most important for your independence because that is your vision straight ahead, and in effect, they give you the ability to read and to see fine detail. Now, peripheral vision, when you go to the doctor or if you're sitting in your chair and you see somebody come up from the side, the rod receptor cells are helping you to see that. The side vision is perceived as you look ahead. It's less distinct. It's gross vision. To put it another way, the cone receptors are the ones that allow you to see, to read, to see the features on someone's face. The rod receptors help you see in the periphery, but they also help you in low light. So the rod receptors are the ones that help you in the middle of the night if you have to go up and go to the bathroom. Sometimes you don't have to turn the lights on because you've got a yard light on or the moon is full. And it's the rods that are letting you get safely to the bathroom. The problem is rods do not let you read, and cone receptors are only located as you look straight ahead. So they have two types of cells and two purposes. Now, I'd like you to look at this. You'll see that it says side vision, central vision, side vision. And what I submit to you is if you look at the L in central vision, you probably already know that it says side vision on either side, but if you look at that L, you can't clearly read those words. If you look to the left and see side vision, suddenly you can't see central vision. That's because the rods that are in the middle that look straight ahead are the ones that let you see to read. Now, partial blindness. These are different definitions of types of blindness. You can have a loss of central vision so that you can't see to read. You can have loss of peripheral vision where you can see straight ahead, but you can't see to the side, so your eyes constantly have to move to give you a full picture. But you can also have permanent distortions or fuzziness if you've got corneal problems, that type of thing. Legal blindness, and we're all kind of aware of that phrase, that can entail any of these, but they're very strict parameters. So if you don't see out of one eye, then that eye could be a partially blind eye or a blind eye. But in order to get tax breaks from the US government, you have to meet the criteria for both eyes. So if one eye sees well and the other one doesn't, then you don't meet that criteria. Now, this is a photograph taking up Big Cottonwood Canyon. This is what someone with macular degeneration tends to have. As you can see, they can see in the periphery, but as they look straight ahead, they can't. This is the opposite. This is the kind of vision loss that happens with glaucoma. The peripheral field starts to be constricted, and you can see less and less and less to the side. So you may have bad glaucoma and you're still able to read and look straight ahead, but you probably have to move your eyes constantly to move safely or to see what's going on, to even read a menu, because your field is constricted. Now, if you have corneal problems, if you have dry eyes, if you have scarring from an accident, that type of thing, you could have blurriness. And blurriness is not always able to go away. Sometimes that can be fixed, sometimes it can't. So those are 3 examples of how different types of vision loss. So then you've got monocular vision with good vision with only one eye, or the brain is unable to fuse 2 images into one. I have monocular vision. I have had a partially blind eye ever since I was 18 months old. So here's a picture. It gives you a lack of depth perception. And that's the important thing about monocular vision. You can see something exactly how far away it is because you can't see it in 3 dimensions. And this is my hero, Andre de Toth. He lost his eye in World War I, and yet he was the pioneer for developing 3-dimensional movies and 3D imaging. Now, color blindness is not true blindness. It is just impaired perception of color. It's usually due to heredity. It's most often manifest in poor red to green discrimination. It's more common in males, sorry guys, and it rarely affects normal function. But let's say you're colorblind, red-green, colorblind, and you're driving. How do you know when the lights change? Well, because there's more illumination. There's bright. When the red light's on, it's bright. It's brighter than the other two lights. And there are all sorts of cues like that that people with color blindness tend to develop through time. Now, this is what would be what a red-green discrimination color blindness would affect. This was taking the red out of that photograph, and now it's back. And so it isn't horribly limiting, but it is something that's supposed to keep you out of the military, and maybe you don't want to be an interior decorator if you don't have if you can't discriminate or you can't perceive colors well. So let's talk about refractive errors, which are irregularities in the shape of the eye that cause blurry vision. And images are not clearly focused, and they can occur in combinations. And refractive errors when you're a child, that's why you need to have screening, because as a child, you may not know what clear vision is supposed to be like. But nearly all of us at some point in time need to have some kind of correction to a refractive error so that we can see well in the distance or see well close up. So the first one I want to talk about is nearsightedness, and that's when your eye is physically long and the focused image falls short of the retina. And here's an example of that. Here is the apple. Light goes through the front of the eye, and you see it's falling short. The sharp image is falling short of the retina. That's supposed to be back there. So that is nearsightedness. And more people tend to be nearsighted when they're younger, and then with the passage of time, things change. Now let's talk about, whoops, I'm sorry. Let's go back. Let's talk about farsightedness, which we call hyperopia. And in that case, the eye is too short and the focused image falls behind the retina. So you need to get glasses or something to help bring that image forward. And then finally we have astigmatism, which is, having trouble advancing my slide, I'm sorry. Blurry images. And that can happen with the corneal shape. It can be irregular and cause light rays to scatter and prevent sharp focus. And this, it can be an example of astigmatism. You get glasses, a correction, and you put that correction at the right angle, and you can clear that up. So now vision testing, and by the way, this monstrous thing is called a phoropter. You've probably all had that used on you once or twice in your life. Vision testing is a measurement. There's several things. There's the measurement of central vision, or what we call your visual acuity, and that is how well you see looking straight ahead using the cone receptor cells. What does And what it means is, and this is kind of complicated, but it has to do with the refraction of light of one candle at a meter. Okay, well, what does that mean? Well, to make it more meaningful for you, if you see 20/20, let's say, you can stand 20 feet away from something and see it clearly. Or if you move 70 feet away from an object, you can see it as well as someone with 20/70 vision has to stand 20 feet away. So it has to do with how clearly you can see a subject. Now, the refraction is measuring the amount of refractive error you have. So when you go to the doctor, they're trying to get you to see 20/20, and so, or your technician, your optometrist, they are trying to measure what kind of power it would take to make it so that you can see 20/20. So how can eyesight be corrected? Well, we just kind of alluded to that. You can have eyeglasses or contacts. You can have surgical procedures. You can have refractive surgery. A lot of us have heard about that. And that's where they use laser or incisions on your cornea to change your refraction, to make it so that physically changing the cornea can improve your vision. You can have an intraocular lens power. When you have cataract surgery, they can put a man-made lens in that will help change it so that you are not nearsighted or farsighted. Or you can have low vision aids if refractions can no longer get you where you want to be. Okay, so these are acquired eye disorders, and they are often age-related, and that's what we're talking about here today. Cataract, glaucoma, age-related macular degeneration. Just so you know, for all of us that now everybody wants to be politically correct, it used to be called senile macular degeneration. Well, that doesn't sound very good. So age-related is what it's called, ARMD. And then, of course, we have diabetic retinopathy because diabetes is a nasty actor, and the longer you have it, no matter how careful you are, you can start to have complications with your eyes. And then a vitreous detachment, and I threw that in there because most of us get a vitreous detachment, and that is when the jelly-like substance in the back of your eye changes in texture, changes in moisture, just like our skin does as we get older. And your vitreous, which is filling that back chamber in the eye, can pull away. It can pull away from the sides, kind of like an old bowl of Jello can pull away. You have a new bowl of Jello and everything's bouncy and great, and then you have it for Sunday, everybody scoops it out of the middle, and then that bowl gets shoved to the back of the refrigerator. And about a week later, somebody says, oh yeah, here's the Jello. And you may notice that the Jello has collapsed on itself. It's collapsed towards the middle, and it's kind of watery. And that is basically what your vitreous does. And you can get floaters. You can get little clumps that float around in your vision. That's part of a vitreous detachment. That's something that if it happens and you're not sure what's going on or you have any other symptoms, then that's something you need to see your doctor about just so they can make sure that everything's fine. A retinal detachment is different. A retinal detachment is when that tissue, that membrane in the back of your eye that contains the receptor cells pulls away and it's no longer hardwired. And if you have a retinal detachment, you suddenly lose portions of your vision or all of your vision in one eye. That is a medical emergency. So these are the systemic diseases that can contribute to changes in your eye and can cause problems. Diabetes, high blood pressure, coronary artery disease. Interestingly, arthritis, autoimmune disorders can have a real impact on your eyes, and even anemia can affect the circulation in the back of your eye. So here are other things that can affect you. Strabismus. ESO is when one eye turns out, or ESO is when one eye turns in, excuse me. EXO is when one eye turns out. Hypo, it has to do with your eye not lining up correctly. It's going too high or too low. You need to have two images that look straight ahead that your brain confuse. Amblyopia is when your macula doesn't form naturally. And you can have nerve palsies. Everybody's probably heard of Bell's palsy. A stroke can make a difference. Muscle imbalances can be corrected to some extent by putting prisms in your glass. diverting the light going into your eye so that it's in a straighter line to get back to your fovea, or muscle surgery. Okay, now this is my little soapbox. Everybody deserves good eye health. Everybody deserves good eye health care. Your doctor knows best. But second opinions often bring reassurance. If your doctor says, I think you need to have surgery, there's nothing wrong with you having a second opinion. But nothing, no social media, no internet, no conversation about your neighbor's cousin's girlfriend telling you something that's not the same as going to your eye care specialist and getting good advice. Okay, sorry, a little trouble with the slides. Common ocular disorders, cataract, which is opacities of the lens. The nature of the lens is changing as we get older. Age-related macular degeneration that has to do with deteriorating retinal cells. Glaucoma is abnormal pressure building up in the eye that causes damage to the nerve. And diabetic retinopathy is when your blood vessels are damaged by the sugar imbalance that diabetes causes. And then the vitreous detachment with floaters that I just mentioned. Okay, let's talk about cataracts. They are lens opacities, changes in the moisture content of the lens, and certain environmental factors can contribute. If you've taken a lot of steroids because, say, you have an autoimmune disease or something, steroid use can cause cataracts. If you are a ski patrolman and you are outside in the sun with reflected light a lot without good protection from sunglasses or something, that can cause it. Fishermen, deep sea fishermen on the water all the time in the Chesapeake Bay or in the Pacific, the reflected light can make a big impact on your lenses. But the most important thing for you to know is that it is the most common reason for vision loss globally. Everybody gets cataracts if they live long enough. Now, does everybody have to have surgery? Yeah, there are some people who never do have surgery, but everybody gets cataracts if they live long enough. So don't feel like, oh my gosh, I'm falling apart, something's terribly wrong, oh, I'm cursed. Cataract surgery is the most common surgery performed in North America, Canada, United States, where we have access to good health care. Okay, they just surgically remove the lens and it's replaced with a man-made intraocular lens, and surgery is the cure for cataracts. And this image is of a guy, just to show you what environmental factors can do. This guy got electrocuted working on a refrigerator. So this is really an impressive cataract. They took it out. He saw normally. Now, age-related macular degeneration, that's a deterioration of the cone receptor cells. It is the loss of central vision. Now, let me show you. What happens is that new blood vessels grow where they shouldn't be. This is the fovea. It doesn't look the same as around here. It's swollen, and there's been a little bit of hemorrhage. There are two forms of macular degeneration. This is an example of the wet form, where blood vessels have encroached into this area and there's fluid. And the other is dry, and that is changes not unlike the changes that you have as your skin gets older. They just change. So there are two forms. They both contribute to a loss of independence, because this is where you see to read, to see the features on someone's face, to drive, and this is what's being affected. So wet form requires intensive treatments, and now they have injections, thank goodness. It used to be that laser was the only option, and each of these conditions may benefit from a vitamin or carotenoid. Carotenoids are a chemical in your body that contributes to the health of your receptor cells, and there are supplements, vitamins with increased zinc, etc., that can be helpful, not curing, they're not the only answer, but they can be helpful in trying to maintain good retinal health. Who tells you to take AREDs? Your eye care specialist. You can take them on your own if you go to, there are over-the-counter preparations, but you should always check with your doctor to see if that's what's best for you. Okay, glaucoma. That is damage to the optic nerve, usually due to abnormal pressure in the eye. There's but this is frightening a little bit. Early onset has no symptoms. Irreversible damage to the optic nerve, loss of visual field, and it's treated with drugs or surgery. So what happens with glaucoma? Well, here is the optic nerve, and this is where all of the wires, all of the nerve endings, connections from your receptor cells go to your optic nerve and then go back to your brain. Well, if you could think, if you could visualize a balloon that is being filled with too much air, and you could do stop action photography, just before the balloon bursts, you would notice that there's going to be a little area where the balloon offers the least resistance to that air, to that pressure, and that's where the balloon is going to burst. Now, your eye obviously doesn't burst, but the part of the eye that is the most vulnerable to pressure is your optic nerve. And the pink area here still has good connection to the brain. This is where the receptors are no longer there. They've been pushed, they've died because of pressure. So being tested for glaucoma is important. Not everybody gets it, but it is a problem, and it can make a huge impact on the quality of your life. You may still have central vision in the middle, but if you can't see in the periphery, it changes your ability to walk around. It changes, you have to move your eyes constantly to read. Glaucoma is a big deal. Diabetic retinopathy, significant ocular findings. There are all sorts of things that happen. Damaged circulation because of the sugar imbalance changes your entire body. It's not just your eyes, it's your kidneys, it's your fingers and your toes, it's the quality of your skin. It has a huge impact, though, on your retina. You can have a loss of both central and peripheral vision because blood vessels get blocked off, like up here, and you can get hemorrhaging. And diabetic retinopathy is huge, and you need to be with an ophthalmologist or a retina specialist. An optometrist can certainly help you out at the beginning, but you probably need to be with somebody who can order steroids, metabolic drugs, or do laser, because laser is still an important treatment for diabetic retinopathy. Now, what causes changes in your eyes? Okay, let's talk about this. The passage of time. Think of the changes you've seen in your life. Look at your body. Look at your skin. Look at your face. Look at your hair. Things change over time. Now, genetics. Let's be honest, you can't change your parents. If you have a strong genetic component that dictates that you could have diabetes or glaucoma runs in your family, you can't change your parents. You can exercise, you can do a lot of things, but you need to be aware of what your genetics are, what possible problems are, and work with your physicians or your eye care specialists to stay on top of things. Okay, there are some disease process. There are some conditions, not many, but there are some conditions with your eyes that are a result of early lifestyle choices. And mostly, I would say, that would be diabetic changes or macular degeneration. Everybody knows by now, I hope, that you shouldn't smoke. Having poor diet, if you drink to excess and you don't have a good diet with green leafy vegetables, all those kinds of things. And if you have not taken care of yourself and you develop diabetes, those are early lifestyle choices. Most of those can be corrected. You stop smoking, you have a better diet. That won't necessarily make your problem go away, but it has to improve your general health. And then the other thing is environment. I mean, let's be honest, if you living here in Utah, there are a lot of people with dry eyes. People in Seattle don't have that problem because of all the natural moisture, because of the humidity there. But also, if you're in high elevations, whether you're hiking, whether you're skiing, whatever you're doing, the sun is brighter, and not wearing sunglasses when you're on the water, when you're on the snow, when you're at high elevations can make a difference, and it could lead to early cataract formation. We're learning that babies, we used to think it was cute and funny for babies to wear dark glasses, and now they're starting to think children should wear dark glasses. So I just want to emphasize this. It's not necessarily your fault, Mom, Dad. bud, friend, if you're having problems. It's not necessarily your fault. People who are in perfect physical condition, who have worked hard on it all their lives, can still experience some changes. And people who haven't taken care of themselves can experience the same kinds of changes. Long life in this world means aging. Doesn't matter how good your diet is, how much rest you get, which side of the bed you sleep on. Aging is a normal result of the passage of time. You can be annoyed if you're starting to have age-related changes, but it's just, you're as old as the rest of your body. If your joints are old and you have trouble with your joints, if your skin is wrinkled and you're having trouble with that, just remember, your eyes are as old as the rest of your body. So you shouldn't be too surprised if you start to develop some of these age-related problems. And there are just some inevitabilities in life. So this is what I'd like to say, and this is based on 47 years of working with people who have vision problems. You can accept that you have a problem. That's not giving in, and it's not giving up, but it's learning how to cope with the challenges you live so you can live your best life. So how can you learn to cope? So you have cataracts. What can you do about it? So you have macular degeneration. What can you do? Or how can you help loved ones, friends, anybody do better despite the fact that they have vision changes? So let's talk about who is visually impaired, because that's kind of important. And I call them VIPs, visually impaired patients. Some people call them very important people, and the two are apt, they fit. It's a person with an eye disorder whose visual performance is decreased because of, we talked about it, reduced acuity, visual field, reduced contrast, or other dysfunctions that prevent performance to full capacity compared to a normal person of the same age and sex. So that's someone who is visually impaired. Somebody has an inherited disorder, Stargardt's disease, if somebody has retinitis pigmentosa, they're visually impaired. It's just part of the process. Doesn't mean they aren't capable of doing the same things that normal people can do. But here, let's talk about some of the visual dysfunctions. So we talked about reduced visual acuity. That's when you can't see straight ahead accurately. You can't read clearly. Loss of foveal and macular function. That's what's the result of that. Abnormal visual field. That's restriction of vision or encroachment on the macular function. And that can happen from stroke, that can happen from diabetes, that can happen from glaucoma. Reduced facial contrast sensitivity. This is a big deal, and we're going to talk about it for just a minute. And that's a loss of detail discrimination across. Talk about here. How many of you have seen the E-chart? Hard to imagine just about anybody in our country hasn't seen the E-chart. That's a little bit of a joke because there are too many folks that don't want to give up driving, and they want to get where they want to get, and that's part of their independence, and we get that. But to some, dignity is independence, and the ability to maneuver and function independently with a minimum of assistance is of great importance, as long as you take into consideration whether your ability to be safe is going to impact other people and keep them safe as well. So there's some things to think about. How much light you have to see is a consideration. How much magnification you may need to see things better as we get older. That can be bifocals, that can be a magnifying glass. But then there's contrast. And let's talk about, I've got signage here, but also talk about decor. Signage might be if some of you have a business or something like that where you work in a facility where you're trying to move people, you're trying to get them directed to the right way, like finding a bathroom or this way to the optical shop, or in a grocery store, this is where you find the cereal. If someone is visually impaired, the location can make a difference, the size and the kind, or the point of focus. That could just be putting pictures in your house, putting a decoration in your house, putting addresses on the front of your house. The size and the kind and the location of that information is important. The color can make a difference, and contrast once again. Okay, so anytime you're trying to communicate something, if you want if you want someone to see a beautiful photograph that you have taken, or you want to have scenes in front of you on your wall that you're going to appreciate, and you want other people to appreciate, then you should probably have them closer to eye level and not too high. It's hard to maneuver safely and look forward for overhead signs. So grocery stores, they're kind of stuck, but it's tough. You may not say, I can't find this. It's because a lot of us are looking down to make sure we don't fall, and we're not looking up to try to find where the information is, where the notes are. So if you're trying to direct people, try not to have multiple signs and have them on top of each other, because it takes too long to try to walk through it, read through it. And if you're writing to your dad, if you're writing to your neighbor, if there's important information that you need to remember, whether it's you that doesn't see as well or someone in your family, you should write your notes big, bold, and bright and put them in an uncluttered space. So putting reminders on the refrigerator with 35 other pieces of paper is not a good idea. Putting a note in the middle of a door that someone has to go through is going to be a better idea, because they're going to see it, they can read it better, all those things. Now, this is just a quick thing for any of you who use Amblyopia grids, some of you who have macular degeneration and your doctors have given you a grid to look at to kind of keep track of how you're doing. I'm not going to go into explanation of that, but I want you to remember that you should put that grid someplace, like on the back of a door in your bedroom or in the kitchen or something. Leave it there. Keep it in the same place. Look at it the same time of day with the same lighting conditions. And that's going to be the most accurate assessment of whether you have any changes happening using an Amblyopia grid. If you don't know what an Amblyopia grid is, then that's great. And you may learn about it, you may never. It's just a little mystery. So let's talk about the kinds of print. Simple, using block capitals would be preferable. And like if you have an elegant sign, if you're having a yard sale, if you're having, any kind of, you're writing a notice, you want people at church to know a certain thing. If they don't see well, using simple letters is going to be a lot better than using beautiful cursive or calligraphy. Someone walking by, driving by, if you've got a yard sale sign coming up, yard sale Saturday, if it's not in simple letters, they may not be able to read it and they're just going to ignore it. Okay, let's talk about contrast. According to a group of people that we worked with at the Moran Eye Center, that was where I used to work, number one. That is, if you have gray walls, and that's kind of the trend now, you have a gray house, gray walls, gray carpeting, you like chrome, someone who's visually impaired, or any of us, are going to have a harder time getting around than if there are things that offer contrast to help us maneuver. So the importance of contrast cannot be overstated. Doesn't matter if you have dark on light, light on dark, it doesn't matter. And I'm going to give you some examples of what I'm talking about here. This is what most doctors, most people who are visually impaired will tell you. Contrast perception is more important than visual function than visual acuity. If you have contrast to help you get around, it's more important than if you can see 20/20, but you're not safe walking through a room that doesn't give you contrast. So, inadequate contrast. These are some examples. Now, this is a stairway next to the Moran Eye Center, for the old Moran Eye Center. There's a new Moran Eye Center, but anyway, this is at the University of Utah. And went outside, and I noticed that you can see the Fitzers on either side, but going up those stairs, they all kind of look the same, and the handrails are, aluminum color. They're pewter kind of in color, and they're not that different from the stairs. So at Moran, we decided we wanted to try to make things better for our patients. And so we did this, and you'll notice that that's a lot safer. You can see where the stairs are individually, and you can grab the handrails easily because they offer a good contrast to the surrounding area. Look at all those old cars. This must be an old slide. Okay, this is helpful. If you're walking on cement, as you know, and you can't really see anything that breaks things up. You could stumble because there's a slope to that gutter, and then you step up that and you walk onto the sidewalk, and then you get to the black carpet. So anything you can do for yourself or for someone else to give them an idea of where things are or the accurate size and shape of something is going to be helpful. So we flunked in a lot of ways according to our VIPs because we had black chairs, a black ottoman against a gray carpet, and people who didn't see well and didn't have good contrast. I saw people actually try to sit in the middle of this. They thought this was a couch and they couldn't see that there was that hurts. So this is what we did to change it. We talked to the people at Moran, said, no, we got to change that. We got to make it better. So we got new chairs. We got new love seats that are figured, that are different colors, so that people could discriminate them easily. And they were on legs that offered contrast to the carpet. Now, this was going from one area of the building to another, and that's fine. I mean, that's perfectly fine, but I want you to notice that the flashing here is not that far away in color from this. And I've seen people who are seriously visually impaired. I'm not talking about us who, you know, are using the senior centers necessarily, but if you, this is too close to what the carpet is, and I would see people start to try to walk over here. They think that was still part of the floor. Now, this is what Moran did to change it. We made cuts in the carpeting to show where there was an intersection, to show that there could be oncoming traffic. Now, these are stairs. These stairs were a nightmare. This was in the Moran Eye Center, the first Moran Eye Center. Gray stairs, hard to see, especially if you're coming from the top where the lighting is coming down. It was hard to see where the stairs were. So we took care of that by putting in black railings and having black stripes across the top of the stairs. And it was so much better for everybody. People in a rush who aren't paying attention, people who are visually impaired. It just was much safer and just a much better situation. This was one of our hallways. It's a little dark. I just didn't have the shutter open far enough. But as you can see, the contrast here, now we change the contrast, and that's much better. First of all, the carpet shows where you're supposed to walk. There's black around the doorways, so you can see those easily. You can see these black chart holders. Nobody needs chart holders anymore, right? Because everything's electronic. But these are the types of things that we did. Okay, so these are some pictures that were done by a patient of mine who had impaired vision. And he was pointing out when he moved in with his daughter that she gave him a nice, clear, pretty cup to use in the bathroom. He had a heck of a time seeing it. He ended up breaking it. Now she gave him and they're slightly out of focus, but the patient did this. And so I just wanted to use them because this is what he produced. She got him a red cup, and now he can see that easily. These are the light. This is an example of the light switches outside of his room. He eventually knew where it was, and he could find them. But she also had some metal panels, little plates around the outlets, and that made it so much easier for him to find so that he could plug things in. And now this is his this is his example of his toothpaste. She got him blue toothpaste, and he was a much happier man. He saw exactly how much toothpaste he was putting on that white brush. Now, she got rid of her white towels, and she got him red towels and a red shower curtain. Perfect. Now, oh, this got shifted. I apologize for that. This is supposed to be an example. a bathroom that is too plain with no contrast. This is the same bathroom, and you can see that the contrast makes a difference. Now, this is the toilet in that same muted tone bathroom. You can change that cheaply if somebody's having a problem and just put color or put contrast on top of the toilet. It's much easier to find. Here is butter on a white plate. Here is butter on a blue plate. So you're not making a mess. Someone who has increased contrast can have a better sense of where they want to cut that slab of butter. Now, this is an example. I should have used white bread. I used wheat bread. But as you can see, a white tablecloth, a white mug, a pale sandwich is kind of hard to see on a white plate. But if I add color, then it makes a difference. However, let's look at this real quickly. It's a lot easier to see the coffee in the white mug than it is to see the coffee in the black mug. So I guess what I could say is the aesthetics of the plates you use. Maybe use different plates depending on what you're eating. If you're eating pasta, use a darker plate. If you're eating a steak, put it on white so you can see to cut it. Just those little things can make life easier, and it's not that expensive, and it helps people be more independent, which is our whole point here. Here is my china on a white tablecloth. And yeah, it's got a little bit of contrast, but a friend of mine loaned me a charger, and now I can see that much better. And those are things, if someone is having trouble, they'll be less messy when they eat, they'll feel better about themselves, and you'll feel better too. So let's talk about lighting. Lighting in your home. Yeah, having gooseneck lights for reading, sewing, and seeing fine detail is a great idea. You can get them at fabric stores. You can have floor lamps that have gooseneck lighting, and they're a fabulous tool. Turning lights on while you're moving through the space, that's key. You know, I mean, we need to save money, we need to save energy, but turning lights on, even if you're in your home. What if the dog runs in front of you? What if somebody didn't push a chair back where they're supposed to? Putting lights on is safer, but you can have it too bright. You don't want to have things so bright off of white reflective surfaces that it causes glare. And glare from highly reflective surfaces is a problem. So if you can pivot your lights, or if you can adjust the amount of light, that's great. And also, I just want to say, some people have tinted glasses. They have, we used to call them photogray lenses so that they get darker in the sunlight. Those can be helpful when you're outside, but when you come inside and you're trying to read, if you suddenly put a bright light to read, and you have tinted glasses and they get darker, now you've defeated the purpose. So if you like photogray glasses, that's great, but if you're trying to read and stuff, you shouldn't have any kind of tint in your glass that cuts down on the amount of light. And if you're light sensitive, that's one thing, but just because you have a vision problem doesn't mean you should start wearing dark glasses all the time. Because if you cut down on the amount of light, you're usually cutting down on the efficiency of how well you see. All right, this is an example of goose. And this is an example that doctors' offices should use. These are doctors that I used to work with. And as you can see, this is more normal size, but for someone who's visually impaired, this is a blessing. And if you're visually impaired, you maybe don't need to know all this kind of stuff. So you can get two, one for the family and one for you. But the size, the contrast, the location of a message or a note is important. Just like on your computer, you can increase the contrast on your computer. Now, this is a great tool. You can find them on the internet easily. They're called signature guides. And if you still write checks, you can have one of these things and you can stay within the lines. And they are very helpful as you do your business, even writing up your grocery list, so that you're not writing on top of other letters. Okay, let's talk about safety in the home. If you're living with someone who's visually impaired, or if you are visually impaired, close the door. That is, close the cabinet doors, close closet doors, and especially stairways. The other thing is close drawers. In the bathroom, just get in the habit of kicking that drawer all the way shut, because people, unless they look down all the time, if you look down all the time, maybe you'll see an open drawer. But if you look down all the time, you may not see a cabinet door and you might get hit in the face. So just keeping doors closed is really critical. And then put tools away. If you've got someone, if you're around someone who's visually impaired, or you are, and you're running the vacuum cleaner, somebody comes to the door, move that vacuum cleaner before you go to the door, move the vacuum cleaner against the wall or behind a chair. Put brooms away. If someone has to go out to the car, then keep the shovels and everything out of the way. Buckets can be a problem. Keep items in the same place consistently. That's important for all of us. Even if we can see, trying to keep things in the same place and not having to look for them all the time. I wish I could figure that out for my cell phone, but keeping things in the same place consistently is really important. It's great discipline. And keep furniture out of pathways, especially ottomans and chair and footrests. Those things can be terrible. And if you've got grandkids, or if you've got kids that have come and they've brought toys out and stuff, do everything you can to try to keep the pathways that someone's walking on clear. Nobody wants to step on a Lego. Nobody wants to trip on a ball. And same thing with pets, which are a whole different story. And then in areas of low contrast, provide bright colors. So say you're going to visit your son and daughter-in-law, and they have a beautiful, clear, bright white kitchen. If you're having trouble looking for pewter handles or silver handles against a white cabinet, grab a piece of yarn that's a bright color and put that on the drawer handle. Or if you've got, sliding glass doors aren't quite as prevalent as they used to be, put stickers on any place where there's glass that someone could think, someone who doesn't see well could think that they are walking through a clear space. Put stickers, put put anything that's going to say, wait a minute, this surface is here. And then I want to show you about being a sighted guide. There's a standard way for assisting people who are visually impaired. And I will say that taking them by the hand and pulling them along is not the way to do it. It's unsafe. It makes the people anxious. And that is the one thing I've noticed that stood out so much for me working in my 47 years of working with people who are visually impaired. Being a sighted guide is a set of guidelines that include body signals and verbal signals, and it's a common sense approach. And if someone has if they're have lost a lot of vision and they go to training for rehab, they will learn this. So this is sighted guiding, and I want to thank my folks that were my volunteers. The gentleman the lady on the right calls me Mom, and the gentleman on the left calls me Honey. So that kind of tells you who these folks are. But I want you to look at their position. This is Erin, and Erin is standing slightly in front of her dad. She has her elbow cocked, and he has a hold of it. And this is their position from the side view. Erin is where you want to be if you're being a sighted guide. So now, again, if you'll notice, he has a hold of her elbow. If he wants her to slow down, all he does is pull back and have her elbow against his chest, or he can squeeze, whatever the two of you work out. And this is what it looks like when they step out. Now, Erin is slightly ahead, so that if there's an obstacle, she can step in front of Mike. She can, with her body, direct him to step around it. Or, just like the prow of an icebreaker ship, she can push things out of the way. She can get the obstacles out of the way. There's their feet. She's ahead, he's slightly behind and to the side, not side by side, because she's not running interference if she's not in front of him. And once again, you see that their feet are not in front of each other. And it's courteous, and it's just a lovely way for people to be independent. You don't call a lot of attention to yourself when you do it this way, but dragging someone by the hand where they could trip over things is never a comfortable situation. Now, proper escorting is good. The safety of the VIPs at the senior centers, I want to talk about that a little bit, and I just want to show you an example of the low vision simulation that we did at the eye center where I worked, which was really great. The low vision orientation was special goggles that simulate ocular pathology. So you could put these goggles on, and someone had gone through, a scientist had gone through and made the lenses opaque except for simulating what the vision is like. So our staff would wear the goggles, and they're requested to attempt the same tasks that we ask of our patients. And it was illuminating. And there is a Dr. Lisa Ord at Moran Eye Center who, and this isn't an ad for the Moran Eye Center, but she is a well-known community resource. She actually does low vision orientation for people who are losing their vision, but for their family as well. So the family can see what the simulation is like of what Aunt Maud sees or what Dad sees. And the seeing family can wear these goggles and see what it's like to ask people to do things. And others, and then the families get taught how to do sighted guide. And when we do orientation for new employees, they also get to learn this. It's very important for people to, if you can, do this orientation, because I can remember my mother had macular degeneration, and my dad would be so frustrated because he'd say, your mom can't sign her checks, she can't read the menu, but she can be sitting in her chair and she'll notice that I dropped a Kleenex on the floor. Now, how is that? And the answer was her cones with her macular degeneration were the ones that were destroyed. So she couldn't see straight ahead to sign her checks. But because a white tissue on a blue rug provides excellent contrast, she could see it with her peripheral vision. So sometimes people get frustrated. Well, how can you do this and not do this? And the answer is it has to do with the kind of vision loss they have. Okay, this is an example. This is John, and this is Anne, and this is Julie, who's a technician. You can see that hers are simulating glaucoma, and his are simulating vision loss from diabetic retinopathy. And they are trying to do the paperwork that we ask patients to do. And especially with Anne, if you have glaucoma, you see she's having to move the form back and forth because she has such a limited field. And then this is a great image of Julie escorting Anne with sighted guide training. Now, let's talk about who goes to the Salt Lake County Senior Centers. It's the people who can name all four Beatles. And this isn't a test, so if you can't, it's okay. But let's face it, the Beatles were big starting in the 60s, and most of us that go to the senior centers remember the Beatles. But it's also people with diminished sight, either vision ahead or vision to the side. But it's also people with diminished hearing, and it might be that they have real hearing loss, or they're plugged in, they're wearing earphones. But also the people who go to our senior centers are people with limited movement, and they have slow responses. We need to think about all of those things, right? Just because we can see doesn't mean everybody can. Just because we can hear doesn't mean everybody can or can at the moment because they have earphones on or they've got earbuds in, that type of thing. And some people can't move out of your way as fast. They have slow responses. Maybe their joints are stiff. So these are things we need to think about when we're with other seniors. Here are the danger spots I see at the Mill Creek Center. And the Mill Creek Center is a great facility, but these are the things that I see that are a problem that people need to be aware of. And the one that really bothers me is the oval track. People walk on the outside lane slowly because they like it there. But that is keeping runners or people who walk faster from being able to move through that lane. That lane, and it's posted, that lane is for passing or only, or for runners, people who are or speed walkers. Being in that outside lane, if you don't move fast or you have slow responses, you're a hazard. But then the people coming behind you become a hazard because they don't want to slow down. They want to keep their heart rate up or whatever, and they cut between people from lane to lane, and that's dangerous because maybe people can see fine, but they've got earphones in. So if you're on the oval track and you're walking fast or you're running and you want to get past somebody, use your voice. Just like the etiquette is when you're skiing. If you are a fast skier and you're passing somebody on the right and you're in a limited space, you say on your left, on your right. Help people know, be aware that you're coming. The next thing that I see as a problem at Mill Creek is the dining area. There are silver colored chair legs against a light floor. That's not good contrast. It's what, it's aesthetically pleasing, and you can't always do everything according to what's safe for people who are visually impaired. So push your chairs under the tables when you get up. That eliminates a lot of the problem. The other thing is, if you have tote bags or purses, or if you have a bag full of weights that you've been using or something, put them under your chair or under the table so that people who are trying to walk through that space aren't tripping over them. And then, of course, if you have a spill, then clean it up or ask the staff to help you with that. But being mindful of the fact that people maybe can't see it, maybe can't hear you if you're trying to tell them that there's a hazard in the way. Be mindful of that. This is the Mill Creek Center. I haven't been to every senior center. There's got to be, no place is perfect. So look at the spots in the senior center where you attend and see if there's something that applies. One of these comments that I've made, maybe it applies to your center as well. And pushing chairs under the tables, those types of things, has to be helpful to help somebody avoid being hurt. And finally, there are rights of seniors. Everybody has free choice to exercise or not exercise their rights related to his or her abilities. So not everybody who has low vision chooses to use a cane. Not everybody who has poor hearing chooses to use a hearing aid, and that's their right. So trying not to be judgmental about that is a good thing. But I want you to remember that glasses, contacts, hearing aids, canes, walkers are just tools. They're just tools to keep you safe and help you maintain a level of independence. There shouldn't be a stigma associated with using a cane. Nobody wants to admit they're getting older, but all you have to do is look in the mirror and say, you know what? I don't look like I did when I was 50. And this cane is keeping me safe because it's helping with my balance, it's helping with my mobility. And if I am safely getting around, then people around me are going to be safer. And this is the thing. If you deny a problem, it can be dangerous for you, but it can be dangerous for others. Yep, little emphasis on that. So here are my conclusions. Aging is just a normal process. All of us are going to face challenges. They're not all the same, but all of us do. It's just part of life. Light, magnification, and contrast are important if you are visually impaired or if someone else is visually impaired. Go home or look around your home and just look at that and say, maybe I could do this the next time Uncle Fred comes over. And literally, if you have different kinds of plates, different colors of plates, use the colored ones for light food, use the dark ones use the colored ones for light food, use white plates for dark food, because everybody wants to eat nicely. Everybody wants to be able to manage their own meals and take care of themselves. And adding contrast is going to make a big difference in being able to eat well. And, some people don't like to make a mess, so they choose not to eat very much. And malnourishment is a real problem in older people. We don't have the same appetites. Maybe we're living alone now and we don't feel like making a big meal, but you have to be well nourished. And a cup of tea, some crackers, and maybe some watery tomato soup is not the way to stay strong and healthy and live your best life. And it's possible to enhance these elements to facilitate the needs of the visually impaired economically and easily. And I hope some of my examples will help you figure that out. And, you know, reassurance and comfort and positive attitude is always good. But the other thing I just want to say is it's okay to ask if someone needs help, but it's also okay for them to say no. And both of those are appropriate. Respecting everybody's independence is a very important thing. And I hope you learned something. Hope you enjoyed this. And I hope you all have a healthy life and a great day. Thanks.